A standing framework for conducting referendums, and it does pain me to say that, not referenda, but each language has its own idiosyncrasies and adaptations. Much better than creating new legislation every time we want a referendum. And it's also appropriate often to have a referendum at the same time as a general election, but not necessarily. You would reduce costs and gain maximum participation, but sometimes holding a referendum at the same time as a general election could be much more polarising. This bill only applies to referendums at the next 2 elections. But why? If you're not very sure about the legislation, perhaps a 5-year review period would be more sensible. Why are referendums good for 2 rounds and not for longer? But there are bigger issues. When is a referendum appropriate rather than divisive? And when is it the best method of deciding an important question? The multiple, costly, local referendums on Maori wards this coalition government is forcing on councils, costly, yes, the dollars are dollars, whether they're ratepayers' dollars or taxpayers' dollars. Those aren't designed to promote local engagement. They're not designed to be deliberative democracy. They are a simplistic lever for rednecks. Deciding on rural wards, large wards, they're not appropriate for a referendum. And I say deciding on Maori representation is not appropriate in a referendum either. Maybe we could look at whether being a republic or a colonial monarchy is appropriate, but you wouldn't do that without a very serious conversation first. And that's what I'm concerned about going straight to a referendum. A referendum should be a full stop after a deep conversation, not the first binary yes, no, let me go with my gut feel, which is not a great way of doing democracy. As the Minister said, the bill does allow for advertising for referendums. But again, this government has not listened to the independent electoral review. Is the balance between free speech and undue influence correct? Why do we allow overseas promoters to influence democratic outcomes in our country? Do we want large corporates to influence referendum outcomes? And are the amounts for disclosure and for total spend correct? I understand that the Taxpayers Union or Greenpeace or Forest and Bird could each spend up to $406,000 on their election campaigning and a further $406,000 on referendum adverts. The independent electoral review, which some of you don't seem to have read, recommended tighter controls both on total spend and also on recording where donations came from. And the Green Party would go further and say that only registered voters should be involved in donating to those causes. And those points about general elections should equally apply to referendums. So in conclusion, a referendum is at the very low end on the scale of, or the spectrum, if Madam Speaker prefers, a spectrum of participatory democracy. Citizens don't define the question, they don't even refine the question, and there's no opportunity to come towards a consensus. However, if there are going to be referenda, we need a framework, so we will be supporting this bill.
The next speech after her is very funny, by the way.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, let's simplify what she's saying. So Celia is essentially making the point that yes or no questions without nuance or context is really not a productive way to run a democracy. It might work in a small rural community like Eketahuna, but it's not going to work in central Wellington, right?
Yeah. But
So-
it was good that she was focusing on the inadequate controls about who spends what where.
And here's also something, and I spoke to this with Stacey earlier, is I called out a Capity Ratepayers Transparency group on misinformation that 6 sitting councillors, 5 sitting councillors and the mayor all like the comment, explain exactly what's going to happen with the Māori ward referendum on the Kapiti Coast. Because people are thinking, no, it might be saying, congratulations, Māori ward councillor, you've won your seat. Oh, but the voters said no. Looks like you got no job for 3 years. And those people who are going to vote no because they don't want to see the Māori ward councillor have a job will be raging when they have their Māori ward councillor on there for 3 years. I mean, if we put the Wellington context, we have an incumbent. Let's say Nico Winera wins another term in office. Good councillor, decent person, what do you call it, green person, also in the territorials, which does seem a really weird mix, but hey, you know, that happens. Are people going to sit there and say, why does Nico have his job? Why is he in there? I voted no on the referendum. Why is he being sworn as the Māori ward councillor? I didn't know it meant that it was from the next local body election starting in 2028. Why was that not explained to me from my redneck friends?
Mm.
You know, it is definitely going to be interesting. And, like, you've got councils like Upper Hutt who have decided to delve away from the referendum. You've got Carson who'd never entertained going down a Māori ward. And, I mean, the reason why Carson never did was that they only have 800 voters on their in their Māori electoral population, which they said that itself, and like Rob Mark sat there and said, it was something like under first past the post, a general ward voter would get 7 votes and a Māori ward voter would get 1, based under the first past the post rules. Hence why he was against that in Carterton.
But you kind of bring up the point. This is why it's important to educate the public. And I read through this bill, right? The bill essentially allows for advertising for referenda. Do we want corporations to influence the outcomes? So we're dealing with a group of people that may not be aware of all the intricacies and the context and the nuance of what's happening. And then you get someone like Hobson's Pledge who puts a dumb ad in the Herald saying, Maori are going to stop you from using the beach. And then what happens next?
You're going to suddenly have a whole heap of people going, I'm voting on this because supporting redneckers.
Mm-hmm.
Well, currently you put facts and money on the scales, and the money does that.
Yeah.
Yep. And he always does that.
Thanks for watching. Make sure you're subscribed to our Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Instagram, TikTok.